Well, hello xenographers everywhere and welcome to another episode. The 135mm focal length is a really useful one. It's got plenty of reach, lots of background blur, and it separates the subject from the background at distances where shorter lenses don't. There are many very nice vintage 135s available with a maximum aperture of f3.5, but they can be a bit limiting in low light. So today we're looking at three fast 135s with a maximum aperture of f2.8 from Tair, Sony and Minolta. Each of these lenses has its own unique look and each puts its own aesthetic stamp on the images it makes, and all things considered, I think these are three of the nicest fast 135s I've used. The first of this group is an inexpensive third-party lens, the Sony 135mm f2.8, but despite its low cost, it makes some outstanding images. These lenses were made by the now defunct Sony Optical Company in Japan, and the standard of manufacture is very high. It's a very nicely made all-metal lens. The big focus ring turns smoothly and cleanly, and the minimum focus distance is a fairly long 1.7 meters or about 5 feet. It's a preset aperture lens, so there are two aperture rings, one with click stops and one without, both of which turn smoothly on this example, and I think it's a pretty good looking lens too. This lens came as a big surprise to me. I hadn't expected it to perform particularly well, but its images proved otherwise. This is a really nice lens. Even if you shoot it fully open, this is a really sharp lens, capable of rendering loads of fine detail. Surprisingly, it's quite a bit sharper than many 135s I've used from major manufacturers. Stopping down doesn't seem to make much difference either, so you can shoot this lens wide open and still get near maximum sharpness. Contrast is something of a mixed bag though. It can be strong and it often is, creating images with plenty of punch and resonance, giving deep blacks and darker shades and rich, bright lighter shades with plenty of nuance and subtlety in between. However, catch even a hint of light at the wrong angle and contrast drops quickly and dramatically, giving a weak and washed out image. Shielding the lens with a hood or a hand will easily cure it, but you may not always want to. I actually really like the low contrast images from this lens. They have very much an old school feel and something of a film type look too. A really nice effect. As long as contrast is maintained, this lens renders colours very nicely. They're rich and strong and vibrant. It doesn't seem to be either particularly warm or especially cool, falling somewhere in the middle. As a long lens with a fast aperture, it'll give plenty of background blur when required. Up close, it's massive and very smooth, and although the amount of blur diminishes with distance, smoothness does not, and I couldn't find a point where blur becomes harsh and starts to detract from a shot. This one is smooth all the way. I find 135mm lenses to be particularly useful for street portraits, and that's mainly what I use them for. Their extra reach over a 50 or a 35 means that subjects aren't intimidated and candid shots are easier to achieve. Plus, a 135mm lens gives separation at longer distances, so subjects really stand out. As we might expect, it vignettes quite heavily wide open. Stopping down improves things and it's completely gone by f8. I really like this lens. It's well made, it stood the test of time, and it makes some great images. But perhaps the best thing about this lens is the price. I recently paid all of £10 for this one, and at that price you just cannot go wrong. Our next lens is something of a legend, and having shot it, it's easy to see why. It's the Tair 11 135mm f2.8 made by KMZ in Russia. It's a very well made all metal lens with a preset aperture, so 2 aperture rings on this one with no less than 20 aperture blades. This lens is on loan to me from viewer Derek Holmes, so many thanks for that, Derek. This lens is in really nice condition. Focus and aperture rings move smoothly and cleanly. Minimum focus distance is 1.2 meters and maximum aperture is f2.8. In terms of sharpness, wide open, this lens really is quite something, at least in the centre of the image, and stopping down doesn't give any significant improvement. Corners do sharpen up at f8 though, so if you need sharpness right across the frame, it's best shot at this point. If you don't need sharp corners though, you can shoot it wide open with no significant loss of sharpness. This lens has strong contrast, and thanks partly to its coatings, but perhaps mostly to its built-in lens hood, it maintains that contrast in a wide range of lighting conditions. Try as I might, I couldn't find a point where the lens loses contrast and washes out. This one seems to resist it really well. One of the nicest features of the lens is the way it renders colour. It's not particularly high in saturation, not like a Zuiko or a Carl Zeiss Jenner for example, and most of the time it renders colours with a delicacy that reminds me of the older Pentax lenses or the Jupiter 9. However, on certain occasions, when the light is right, saturation seems to increase. Colours become richer and stronger, deeper and with more punch. This lens has something of a dual personality. As with any fast, long lens, there's plenty of blur on hand when required. It's super smooth too, both close up and at longer distances. Just like the Sun lens, this one too stays smooth throughout the distance range. There is some fairly heavy vignetting wide open at f2.8, stopping down progressively reduces it, and it's gone by f8. Before I shot this lens, I'd heard a lot about it, all of it good. Having shot it, I can confirm that good reputation is well deserved. Asking prices for these seem to be around £150 to £200, so it's not the cheapest vintage 135 out there, but it is one of the nicest, and given the quality of the images it makes, I'd say that's really good value. Finally today we have the Minolta 135mm f2.8. I reviewed this lens a few months ago and I was very impressed with it, so although it's a much more modern lens than the other two, I thought a comparison might be interesting. Minolta lenses are well known for their fantastic rendering of colour, and in that department this one does not disappoint. Colours are rich, strong and vibrant with high saturation, a rather different approach to the Tair with its more delicate tones. These colours have real substance. They leap out of the image and give a solidity and a resonance to a shot. Again, it doesn't seem to be either particularly warm or cold, falling somewhere in the middle, and the general impression is, to my eye at least, very pleasing indeed. Contrast is very strong, and probably because of its more modern coatings, it doesn't wash out, even without a lens hood. It's a very sharp lens too, resolving very high levels of detail, even wide open. It outresolves the Sun, and I think it just outresolves the Tair too, perhaps not surprising given its more modern design. Just like its rivals, it can give plentiful background blur, and again it stays soft as distances change, and it never becomes harsh or unpleasant in the way that blur from other lenses sometimes can. If I had to choose though, I'd have to say that I marginally prefer the blur from the Minolta. It's very hard to quantify, but there's just something that seems that bit nicer about it. In terms of cost, this lens seems to go for somewhere around £50 to £70 or so, which seems to me extremely good value. So, 3 fast 135s, each with its own look, each with a very distinctive aesthetic stamp. The Minolta is the most technically accomplished and has a much more modern look, while the Sun and the Tair have a more old school feel. They're all unique though, and as the old saying goes, you pays your money and you takes your choice. But whichever you choose, I don't think any of these lenses will disappoint. So, that's it from me for now. Please don't forget to like, subscribe and ring that bell before you go. And if you like the content on this channel and you'd like to help it grow and develop, you can do that at patreon.com/Zenography. As ever, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time for some more Zenography. And I will see you next time for some more Zenography.